the address and, okay. I just right now. Yeah, shoot. Oh, it's on. Okay. Oh, okay.
O'clock, and my name is Sherry Sachs. I'm Chair of the Service and Utilities Committee. I am glad we're having this meeting tonight. I'd like to introduce everyone who's here. From the committee, we have Councilwoman Lynn Weiser, and we have Councilman John Brock. We have Mayor Michael Dillon Brennan, Vice Mayor Michelle Weiss, our Law Director Brad Bryan, Service Director Ellen Pennington, Councilman Brian King, Roberta Rubin is our assistant, and I'm very happy to welcome our guest, David Conley. He is the liaison to public officials in the region, including University Heights for First Energy. And we've invited him here to give us an overview of what his role is and what our role is. And so please take it away.
Thank you, Councilwoman Sachs, Mayor Brennan, and the rest of council and others here for having me out today. As Councilwoman Sachs mentioned, Dave Conley with First Energy. I'm your liaison back to the company. I work with other cities within the region. Most recently, you probably knew Wendy Zeely, and then even before that, Kevin Smalley, and then going back. So in the title now is Local Engagement Specialist. It's in the Regional External Affairs space. That was the previous title. Recent changes at the company is just kind of where things have shifted out, and here I am. But I am looking forward to working with you all, and thank you for the opportunity to come out tonight and just really introduce myself to you and to council. So with First Energy, I've been with the company about 15 years now, just this last April. In the regional external affairs space, local engagement for just over the last 6. And again, I act as a liaison from public officials, police, fire, emergency personnel, other community organizations back to the company. And my main goal just coming out today is just to really establish myself for who I am, put faces to the names, and get to know or share off some key points that come up when you're discussing the power company, unfortunately, sometimes. So we'll go through a couple things I wanted to bring up tonight to help you all be successful. I know the cities all work differently with all the different communities that I work with. And Mr. Pennington, I do appreciate with, as far as the administration goes, when things escalate up, a lot of times cities work and we funnel things through central points of contact. It helps to keep everybody on the same page, and that's helpful. So obviously I'm your resources for that, and we'll work through it as things escalate, but there are proper ways and best ways to get residents and your constituents and yourselves some information right at your fingertips, the quickest, most efficient way throughout and any situation you're dealing with the company, whether that's you're moving, you're doing a service upgrade, have a tree question, power outages, and things like that. So at your tables, you see a little pamphlet. It's called Tips for Managing Through a Power Outage. And I do bring that out a lot of times when I do these introductory meetings, mainly because unfortunately, a lot of times when people think about the power company, they're not really thinking about us until the lights go off. If I wasn't here tonight, you probably wouldn't be thinking about me unless these lights were blinking. So I do bring that out as a way to have at your fingertips some good information. I'll touch on a couple of things here as well. The first part I would like to start on is really our storm restoration process. Obviously, severe weather comes up. We're in that spring season now. We start to see this. Storm restoration is something that we take very seriously. We have a robust process that we follow to get the power back on for customers. And actually that process begins days or more ahead of any storm situation. We have on-staff meteorologists that track weather, track the events that come in. Our computer programs and our leadership develop a plan based on what we anticipate damage could be to start either staffing up levels, staging equipment, staging people, depending on what that individual storm situation would call for. Those conversations happen, and then you have the event, and then we start working into our storm restoration process. This is actually a high-level view of how we operate, the multiple steps that we go. The number one thing that we'll do at the beginning of our storm restoration process is address hazards. So these are anything that can hurt somebody. So downed wires, broken trees in the wires, live conductors, things that can cause damage. So this is a situation where you as council folks may get phone calls where you see a truck come into your neighborhood, they do some work, they leave, but the power's not back on. That's because that hazard responding crew is moving on to that next down power line to ensure that the people are safe. After hazards are under control in a major storm situation, after hazards are under control, we're starting into our largest outages, and we're gonna work our way down to the smallest. So those largest, transmission level down to sub-transmission level. But then we're also prioritizing critical infrastructure like hospitals and other things like that as we're working through down to those single node lights throughout the storm. So major storm events, you'll start seeing those larger swaths come on, and that gets large groups of customers back on, and then down to those local distribution lines. As you get further down in this chart, kind of go, that's the top is, obviously where the power plants are. Transmission lines come out of that. So you're looking at thousands of customers down to the sub-transmission level, down into your local distribution lines, and ultimately down to your single node lights. So with that, what's the most important thing someone can do to get their power back on is to call First Energy, let us know that you have a problem. And that's whether it's a day like today or you've got tornadoes tearing through your neighborhood. There's a few ways to do that, and that pamphlet I gave you does outline some of those, but here are the easiest ones. You can go to firstenergycorp.com/outages. It's all mobilized, or it's all optimized for mobile phones, makes it really easy to do. You can text, and I'm actually have a slide up here that shows the different text codes. You can text your outage directly from your phone, or simply call 1-888-544-4877, or that's that 1-888-LIGHTS with an extra S number. The most important thing is to call that. I know a lot of times you probably get phone calls from your residents saying, hey, my power's out. If they haven't called us, that's just slowing things up. So that's why I leave this here. That's great information for you to have to share to your residents. Hey, you've got to let First Energy know, because if we don't, that just slows up the restoration process for them. This is that slide I talked about. I won't leave it. I won't read through it, but this is that slide. It's a great reference piece on the different ways that the text messaging function works. Now, another really helpful tool that's out there, it actually came into play right before the August storms last year. So our outage tool, if you see in that center screen, it's a little bit small, but our outage map on the First Energy's website, they added new functionality of the shapes that go around where outages are. You can drill all the way into where those are in your neighborhood. You can click on those and they'll give you information, the most updated information that's available at that time. Because obviously most people are calling, if they're calling you at this point, they're saying, hey, when's my power coming back on? The best way to get that information is to go right to this site. Your residents can do it. It's right at firstenergycorp.com, outages. It's the first landing page. I'll show you where it is actually in the next slide here. You click on a button, you get the outages, you drill right to the outage map. You can zoom right in on University Heights, right on their neighborhood, and you'll see these shapes. They're color coded. You get the best information that's available. ETRs, so those estimated time of restoration, restoral, those early on in those storm processes, they may not be active. And that's because as we're working through major damage, we have to assess and understand what's going on before you can put an estimated time of restoration that's in there. And then those change over time throughout major storm events. But on a typical day, you would have an estimate there, a cause, a crew activity. So that information is going to be there for customers to access. Also on this screen, there's a button. So if you just want to see what's going on overall on University Heights, it's the top blue button up there. It's hard to see, but it says My Town. You can click on that, then you can click on the Cuyahoga County. You'll filter through it. It's not a live shot here. And then you can filter on University Heights. So you can actually see what's going on in University Heights. You'll see how many customers out of the number that are served. I think it's around 5,200 customers that we have in University. I mean by that is meters, not population, but meters. That would be there and tell you about the number that are active or that are out, and the number that are there. So you'll be able to see that at a more University Heights granular level. But then with the map, it is live, and you can manipulate that as you need. I would always share this with any residents that have questions with yourselves, have that. It's really useful to have. So this gives you this is the First Energy website landing page. You come up onto that to see and you're gonna have your part at the bottom where it shows outages. That's that button that you're gonna click to get to that section where you can access the maps and all that other piece. The other part you might be interacting with First Energy, whether it's moving, whether it's tree related work or questions on trees. I know you get that a lot as public officials as far as, hey, there's a tree near a power line, what can be done? Residents can call into that 1-800-589-3101. That's the customer service line that's on your invoice. And if you have a tree that you think is growing near our power lines and may have an issue, that you can get an order in, a forester will come out, inspect it, and make sure that's not going to cause our equipment an issue. Now, our forestry work, what we do, that is to maintain our equipment safe and reliably. So that doesn't mean that we'll go out there and if there's a tree near a power line, we'll take care of every single one. But if it does pose a hazard to our equipment that won't be cared for in our next maintenance trimming cycle, then the forester will make that ultimate determination, but they may care for that to ensure that our equipment is safe. That's what we have the right and the obligation to do with our forestry work. But further on that service request piece at the bottom, that's that red button down there. Residents can click that and you'll see things over here where they can report also online a tree issue if they have a concern to report a tree problem. Now, if it's a hazard, we're going to tell you to call 911. If it's a wire down hazard type thing, you call 911 and they'll get a crew out there immediately. But if it's something they just need some assistance on it, you can enter the tree problem and work that route. Further, as far as our maintenance program with forestry, I know those questions come up often. We trim, and I'm sure it was probably a couple of years ago now, I believe in University Heights, you may actually have some trimming going on, I believe on the southern kind of central portion of town right now as far as our maintenance cycle. Those cycles are approximately every 4 years to trim for about 4 to 5 years of clearance. Again, the goal there is we're trimming our primary distribution circuit. That's the lines near the top for our main distribution circuit for about 4 to 5 years of growth. It depends on the species. Our foresters work with contractors and we guide them along to do that. The goal there again is to maintain our equipment safely and reliably as best we can. But those are questions you may get. Our foresters, they'll work with the contractors who would ultimately update the city when we're coming through. And if you have questions, those types of things can happen. But that's the goal with those, is to maintain our equipment safely. One point as far as there's a few things with the forestry part I want to bring up. Vines, I know that can often come up. With vines, we will treat those. We will cut them at the base and reach up and cut as high as we can and treat them. We don't necessarily clear those off the lines. Very rarely that would happen, but we will treat those away to keep, again, safety and reliability for our equipment. And then as far as cleaning up of debris, for our maintenance program, we will clean up debris that can be run through a chipper. If it can't be run through that, then it gets left in manageable chunks for the homeowner or the property owner to use or dispose of as they wish, but we do the best we can. As far as storm work, storm work is different. So if there's a major storm or weather related type outage or emergency, that we will clear that hazard from our equipment and get our hazard back, then I get our equipment back up, and that debris does stay for residents to care for. So with that, I know I went through a lot of stuff. Again, my main goal here is to hopefully give you some information to be successful. I think if I leave you with anything, the most important thing for your constituents to know is if you have a question or concern with First Energy, you should be calling First Energy. Those numbers back on this slide, those are very good if you have a power outage. The customer service line that's also in the presentation, very helpful for customers with those types of questions. So with that, if anybody has any questions or comments, I could try to address those now.
Mr. Pennington.
Yes, just one thing I wanted to note also with your presentation here. Under the service request line, there's also an area there for street light and outdoor area light problems. That is an area for each of our residents that they can call in or email in and report out street lights that are out on their street. And that way they get put into the process. When they call them into me, I'm an intermediary on that. I have to then try to identify which pole it might be in a neighborhood. And then I will eventually get that to where I go onto here and I do that reporting. But this is an area for a resident. They go directly to First Energy and they can report those outages.
Thank you. That's great information.
Yeah, and with streetlights, that's probably the most important thing there. Good details with anything, with reporting of outages in any case, good details, as much accurate information as we can get. So what I mean by that, with streetlights, address is the best. If you have, it'll ask for other things like cross streets, other intersections. It's pretty straightforward to follow through. Pole number, if it exists, it's not required, but it's helpful to have. Now, as far as outages, pole numbers, it's on the poles. Sometimes you'll see it's either a kind of a galvanized steel numbers, or it could be the black and yellow ones. You'll see those out there. The problem with pole numbers is they fall off.
Oh.
Something can happen. They're not always there, or they could be a mapping concern and it might get moved. But so that's why I say the address is the best, because then our folks can get out there. They work streetlights during the day, so outages like that. So that's just the safest way to work them. So we go out there at that time. The address, they can throw it into our system and get there. That's what we look for. Now, outages, you believe it or not, putting in downed wire won't get your power back on faster, especially during major storms. Because what's going to happen is, like I talked about earlier, we're going to go in there, Troubleman's going to look, and if you're like at my house, I've got backyard primaries. They're going to go through my backyard, my neighbor's backyard's looking for a wire. It's not going to be there. And then they're going to have to move on to the next one. And that's just wasted time that they could be. So don't be accurate, but detailed. Thank you. Yeah.
Number of years ago, First Energy received from the PUCO an add-on for improvement of the main transmission lines. To my knowledge, a lot of that has not been done. At least it's been reported in the local press. So A, is it being done? And B, I know from the last storm that we had here in University Heights, we discovered that, like a lot of the inner ring suburbs, that our electrical lines are older. Some of them date back to the 1940s. And I know Shaker had a heck of a time getting First Energy to come out and actually start replacing those lines. So it's a two-part question. Are you actually starting to improve the the main transmission lines using that additional money? And number two, when can cities like University Heights expect you to upgrade your infrastructure in our area? Because it's part of our issue is we have areas that suffer blackouts on a pretty regular basis. And a lot of that is due to the older lines. At least that is my understanding of the situation.
So to your first question, I don't have a direct answer to it because I'm not prepared to speak on that well.
Okay.
I know there's been inquiries out there into that, various things. I don't know the answer to it. I know that we invest in our system. To answer specifically what you're referring to, I may have to do some more work and get back to you all. And if anything, I can work through Mr. Pennington to work through that, if that would be helpful, to try to get you some more information to share for that. Now, as far as our work within our main conductors within the city, so just like we do with our forestry, we have a 4-year maintenance cycle that we go through, and to ensure that our forestry work is in play where it needs to be. Now, as far as our main circuit, every 5 years, we do a full circuit inspection to ensure our equipment is operating as it should. If there's deficiencies, damage, other issues that need to be addressed at that time, we work those and they go on a schedule to get replaced. And it's an ongoing, every 5 years, they're inspected for that. Anything you'd see overhead, it's there. So if there's something that needs to be replaced, we work through that piece for it and that type of cadence.
So in other words, the areas where we may have lines dating back to the 1940s, you've looked at them and said, yeah, we don't have to replace those.
That would be the general guideline, yeah.
Okay.
Whether it's
On a personal level,
Mhm.
here's what I'm going to say. East Ohio Gas used to tell us things were wonderful until they blew up a few homes in Fairport Harbor and suddenly realized that maybe they did need to start improving some of their basic infrastructure. Because that's money. It's a huge cost that your companies have to put into it. Um, I- we're in the older inner ring suburbs, because those lines tend to be older, we end up with more problems and our residents go through more outages, which is why I will always choose to bring that up when we get a new rep and remind you that at least someone around here needs to nudge the company.
No, absolutely. And I do appreciate that. And that, as you mentioned, you said that you have some areas in particular that have frequent issues. We do have a power reliability group. A couple things. For the residents themselves, I would encourage them, anytime they have a power outage, call us. That gets it on the record, and then it can help us identify patterns. Now, if it's a long outage, so something like over 5 minutes, that would be something that we'd be able to see, and there should be some type of identifiable cause. Sometimes there's not. I mean, there are situations where there's no cause. And I can give a good example. Again, I live in a backyard fed neighborhood. Trees go up all over the place. And I'm not trying to be funny, but I have a lot of squirrels that my dog chases in the
Yeah.
backyard.
No, I know what you're-
There are times where you can identify the squirrel that got into our equipment, created the fault, and blew off and is in the ground, or the tree or the branch or whichever. We may go out there, we can say, okay, there's something on the ground that identified this is what caused this issue. There was also many times where you could have that tree branch that comes down and falls with 100 other ones and you can't identify specifically. So there are times where the outage cause is unknown. We can take our best guesses, but that's what that is. But again, in those situations, if there's something broken, we get physical eyes on there right as we try to make it, or as we're making that repair. If you do have specific areas that have that problem, we can work and we can do a deeper dive into it if need be. I would just need a specific address. And that's something that I can do in my position.
We can take a look.
Yeah.
There's one other question.
Mhm.
We have at least two, maybe more, where you have come through and replaced lines or replaced poles. And people have ended up in the easement with two poles relatively close together. The top of the one pole gets chopped off because that was your lines. But of course, cable comes through, they put it on your pole. The old phone lines would sometimes end up there. We have had a tremendous difficulty, as well as the residents, in getting, because your response, not you, the company's response, please understand, anytime I say you, Dave, it's not you.
It's okay. I've done this long enough. I don't take it personally. I understand. You got,
It's
it's your
important
job.
to
Yeah, and
clarify.
I appreciate that.
The company's response tends to be, oh, well, we told blah to remove their line and we'll come back and take it out. Well, they're not taking it out because X company hasn't come back and taken it out. So the resident gets stuck in this trap of two poles in the backyard and they want to get rid of the one. Is there any way that First Energy has any clout to help with those things? Because we can send you those addresses.
So the clout it's much of what you described. So we use a system to notify any attachers of record to say, hey, we had to take our equipment off of this pole because any number of reasons. We do as part of our maintenance program. Those are inspected by a third
Yeah.
party if we have to move them so it's safe for our equipment. Other companies may have a different opinion of what's safe enough for their equipment, so we move. That would be one reason. Carpool accidents, other things. So we move it over. We notify the attachers that we're aware of. If there's specific areas, we may be able to try to address those. But again, we're going to reach out that same way, utilizing our joint use contacts through that network to alert them. So it's not that we have this big hammer that we can come through and swing. It's a partnership out there with the other utilities and us and the city. So there's that aspect too. If there's other folks like me from the other community partners that you could reach to, that may be an option as well. But that's kind of the challenge that's out there. You're not alone in that. I totally understand the frustration.
Okay. And I will say this, with the exception of one cycle, you guys have come through on a 4-year cycle for tree trimming. And generally, the companies you hire have been excellent. So it's much appreciated. I know in my neighborhood, we've managed to miss a lot of outages because of it. So there's always a positive thing too.
Thank you.
I have a question, which I asked you, when we spoke on the phone, that I'd like the others to learn, and that is what are First Energy's objectives for transitioning to LED street lighting? What are your plans? What is your overview? How can we work on that? Since the high pressure sodium, well,
Yeah,
they're
so-
gonna be obsolete.
Understood. There is the tariff allows for that, and the city at this point has done what they need to do to work through that tariff. There's been a lot of changes going on with First Energy, and there's an agreement that's under legal review from our side. So,
What do you mean the city has worked through? What is, can you
So-
explain what you just,
yeah, so there's a streetlight agreement that would allow the city to enter into a replace on failures an option. It's no cost to the city. It is, and forgive me if I believe I'm speaking correctly, Mr. Pennington. Thank you. Yeah, that's relatively new to this area, but I'm a little caught up on this one. So,
well, me too.
yeah, so the community has, the community is, you have the agreement, you've submitted that to us, and it's under legal review, and it's not an issue that you have. We're working through it. We had some changes internally, for obvious reasons, and we're kind of getting through that. Even most recently, yeah, if you notice, the card on your table says Regional External Affairs, Local Engagement Specialist, so obviously some changes going on. So you've done what you need to do. We are working through that with our legal to work through those agreements.
So, Mr. Bryan, Mayor Brennan, how did this agreement come about? Did you work on that?
I haven't had any involvement. I think, and David's saying it's under your.
It's a First Energy agreement, and over time, we are at a point where we are still reviewing that. It's from our side. But the tariff is out there. There's options where you can either pay ahead of time.
Mhm.
It's all in the tariff, or for no cost, as things fail, we would replace it to the LED that's there.
So I understand those options.
Yes.
What I'm trying to understand is if I understand you correctly, University Heights has given you a document to review.
Yes.
Mayor, did you do that?
We've signed the document that we had previously executed that Bazili could not locate. We got another version back from First Energy of the document that we would have executed and did execute. We re-executed it and submitted it to First Energy, and we await their approval.
And we meaning without the law department, without our law director?
No, I showed it to the law director.
Doesn't sound like it.
There isn't much to it. I mean, I did forward it to Mr.
No.
Bryan.
Sounds like you're- Did you do this unilaterally?
Well, I did it as mayor, but I did show it to Brad. So,
Okay,
well, there wasn't much to say about it. I mean, option C is simply sign off on and have them do it. And, it's the same agreement that we signed off on before when Jeff Picorni was here.
well, I tried pretty desperately to get you to mention that, and you did not on several occasions, so I was not aware, and nobody in our public meetings was aware that Mr. Picorni or you had an agreement. So
We've talked about this many times.
I've talked about it and you've not. So, and it's on public record, so you can say that all you want here, but
I'm sure the public
anything
record.
times zero is still
as
zero.
to- It's well documented on the public record that Jeff Picorni had previously brought this to me, that we had reviewed it with Mr. McConville, who was the law director at the time, that I signed it, that Mr. Picorni had submitted it, or we had believed that he had submitted it, that it was lost somewhere between here and First Energy or First
didn't keep
Energy
a
or
copy.
here. And it's the same agreement as always. And no, I didn't have a copy. I believe that Mr. Picorni had kept a copy. Mr. Pennington could not find it in Mr. Picorni's records. It's the same agreement as always. And as usual, you're turning this into much more than it really is.
So I will put on the public record that I would like to see the agreement with plenty of time to review it,
Mhm.
not the Thursday or Friday before on emergency, so we can see what it is you are putting forth to our council.
I don't have anything to put forth to council. I sent it to First Energy.
So you don't have a copy.
No, we have a copy. I didn't bring it with me here today.
Mhm. So can you tell us what you signed?
Yeah, I signed the standard agreement that First Energy offers
Okay.
with regard to the LED replacement. And it's the option C.
Option three, I can speak to that. So
Right.
option three is.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Is replace on failure. So what that does is, the standard for that, and I don't have the document in front of me, but the standard is the GE recommended conversion. So GE had developed a chart that said, if you are this wattage legacy style light, high pressure sodium, mercury vapor, it would equate to this wattage LED. And that's the standard replace on failure agreement that's out there.
That's why.
Okay, couple of things. Thank you for explaining that.
Yes.
However, with LEDs, we might choose to have a different light. That is why I think it's important, Mayor, if you would not mind, having your staff or someone on your staff send the committee a copy of the agreement so we can see that. I don't think that's, I mean, if I need to say it's a public records request, I'll say that with those two words for you. And just make it a public records request, and that ends the debate about. I fully understand you signed it, but I think we should have the option in this committee, if we're gonna switch over to LED, to look at exactly what you're gonna be putting up that would match what we have. And do we have the option to choose a different lamp?
So there, we have limited options and we could open up that conversation if need be.
That might be,
but-
if we can see what you currently replace with. I can get the specs easily because I belong to the American Public Works. And take a look at those. And the committee can actually discuss whether we want that, or if we would prefer something else. And if we know what your other options are, that might assist us. I know in some cities, when they flipped over to LEDs, there were issues with brightness, type of light, and saying this matches the sodium. I have news for you. Some of our streets are very dark with the sodiums. And in certain areas, we might want them brighter. But, and I fully understand that maybe the administration might have thought of that. But I think since it's come up in the committee, it's appropriate for the committee to look at that as well.
When I did a doodle poll for all these meetings, service and utilities and the joint building and housing committees, there was a date where there was a quorum for the service and utilities, which is Thursday, June 12th. That's in a month. Perhaps at that time, if we have a quorum, we could have a presentation dedicated to LED street lighting, because my understanding is not only are there different types of poles, different types of lights, different brightness, but also there could be shades or whatever. I'm not sure all the technical terms. But perhaps in areas where there's residential versus commercial retail, we might want different brightness. There's technological advances with, we talked about it with the Tech Commission. Mr. King, we have one of the members is familiar with technology related to LED street lighting, who could help us understand how we could be more efficient, not just with what we choose, but how we choose to use the lighting.
Chairwoman,
Mhm.
I would suggest, let's start at the beginning and find out what there is first.
Okay.
And then take a look at options before we then reach back to First Energy, asking for a detailed presentation where we would have clear, very targeted questions that Dave can come with answers to. I think that is more appropriate use of his time and our time.
I'm not sure that we have the information. So like what I just recited was my own little dabble into it.
I'm aware of that.
We need someone who
But
could
we
really
can't-
tell us.
We also can get that information from GE or their
Mhm.
new land, I forget what the division is. They sold that off. But I know the name. We could have them come in and do the full presentation
Oh,
before we
okay.
go back to
I
First
understand.
Energy and then go from there. Because there's factors here. Where's the light gonna go? How much you are blocking off? What's the crime rate in the area we're talking about? Do we need brighter? Do we need less? So we can do things that are targeted, that we do at one time. If First Energy is doing this and we know in that area we need X, that we can set it up with the company that if that sodium light goes out, they know what we need there. And it's not oh, why we didn't like what you put up and you have to come back. We don't want to make you come back. We have to be able to respect First Energy's time as well as our time.
Well, thank you for shedding light on that.
If I may, there is an email from July 25th, 2024 that was sent by Wendy Zeely to Mrs. Sachs, to me, to Mrs. Weiss, that has the standard agreement. This is the document I signed. So this is what we're talking about here. You do have it.
Could you forward that to me, Mayor, since for some
Like you
reason.
sent it
I
as
never received it?
information. You
I
sent
would
the
appreciate that.
tariff information, yes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Great. Any more questions for Mr. Conley?
I have one question. Dave, how large is your region or how many communities are you the local engagement specialist?
So I cover really north, so like the city of Cleveland, entering suburbs down to about Independence and the east side, and then the east side of Cuyahoga County and then Geauga County as well.
Okay.
So most recently, I worked with the western suburbs of Cuyahoga County, and then as our change that happened right at the end of March, we shifted around and territories changed.
If there are no questions or comments, I want to thank you so much for coming and helping us. We'll do a better job when there's crisis, because there will be outages from time to time. And that's a good reminder. It's very clean and fresh. And we're just glad to welcome you as our rep. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome, Mayor.
Okay. Next on the agenda is Brenda Mockbee, our engineer. We're proceeding along with our roads consultation to do assessments. And what I asked Ms. Mockbee to do was to walk us through the basics. What the timing will be approximately, what the reassessment cycle will be, what interruption criteria are, what the, how the assessments are done with the grading, how it's graded, those types of basic things, so that we have a clear understanding when it comes down. Thank you.
Okay, so I believe you're just asking me to like go through the steps of how the street repair program develops.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so we usually like so this was really my only first year not having a predefined list. Last year, we used the list that was developed from GPD. And next year, should have our own new rating system based on the paver evaluation program. So I hope to present that probably after the summer recess to council. But this year, the way we did it, the mayor and the service director, they started with a list of 10 streets. So most of the streets that were on this list have been in need of resurfacing or some base repairs. So we took a look at those 10 streets and we developed rough engineers estimates on those streets. And then from there, but like the streets that we pick, you know, we look at the age of the street and the condition of the street. Um, you know, is it still like a street repair program isn't a full pavement rehabilitation. It's more of a Band-Aid than getting a whole new street. So we want to make sure the streets that we are working on are that they can get some benefit and some life out of just a resurfacing project. You know, so we look at the condition, the drivability. We look at other projects that might be upcoming. We don't want to pave a street that in a year or two might have another project. You know, like right now, you guys are starting into the lead service, lead replacement line. So Cleveland Water, I believe they have 13 years of streets all planned out that lead lines are going to be replaced on. So, you know, those 13 years of streets, we want to like follow behind those streets with street repair projects. We don't want to precede any of those streets. We were able to look at their list and we were able to make some adjustments. Especially if some of their streets in the first couple years were streets that were recently done. We were able to ask them to move those streets to the bottom of the list versus leaving them where they were. And then we were able to maybe move a couple up because of condition that the streets are in, and we know it can't wait 13 more years to have a pavement resurfacing project. You know, the public response or the public, you know, how much attention, which streets are talked about the most, you know, we do look at a little bit of that too. So out of that list of 10 streets, then we looked at how much they were going to cost. And we went down, you know, we started with three streets that for sure we were going to do based on what we thought our budget was. And then council offered, you know, you guys were agreeable to doing some alternate streets and we'll see how the prices come in. So then we added 3 more streets. So we have 6 streets in our street repair program and we'll have that engineering work done on all 6 of those streets. You know, if we're able to go to construction on all 6, that would be great. You know, if something doesn't get done this year, you guys could have an early street repair program next year and we could pick up on those streets that are, the plans are ready and ready to go early in the year. I think the streets that we are looking at doing, you know, they've all been, you know, they're all like, I think the oldest street was resurfaced in 2002. So, you know, they're streets that are in need of some work. And we will take, you know, do some base replacements where there's bad sections that need repair. I believe East Carroll is one of those streets that has a large base replacement that we're going to have to address. And then we're going to do the resurfacing and we'll try and do as much curb work as we can. But then, you know, some of the curbs are affected by trees. And I did get some feedback from the city arborist and he said, whatever the diameter of the tree is, go out like 2 times that diameter. You don't want to get too close to the roots. So we'll see how much curb work we can do on some of our streets.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you for that explanation. I just have a couple of questions. So when you're saying base repair, like let's say on East Carroll, you mean you're going down to the brick?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, right. So most of your streets are, I've learned, are brick streets. So, Some of them, I mean, some of them have some concrete under there from old, past projects, sewer replacements, water replacements, whatever. But yeah, so we will take out that brick, the contractor will take out that brick and we'll do something more substantial. We'll repair it. So sometimes some of those base repairs are due to sewers that might be leaking and it's undermined the base, so the brick might not be in bad shape, but it's sunk. And because it's sunk, because, water was eroding away underneath the brick, that's why you have some of these bad low spots, cracks and whatnot in the city.
And then do you know, is there like an average of how far down our pavement is now versus what the original was?
Are you referring to like your curb reveal or
No, from
you
like
feel
the
like everything
like the
has?
street all the way down to the brick? Like, are we
Oh,
like 5 inches above it, or like, is there a way to?
well, I think most of what we found so far, the asphalt's maybe like 3 to 4 inches above the brick.
Because I guess this is my question was, so let's say you're doing a total street repair, right?
Mhm.
So that means you're digging brick out.
Yeah, we would take out
And
the
then-
brick. We would put a new sub base, which would be
Concrete?
stone. Well, we
Oh.
would start with stone on the very bottom, aggregate base, and then we could do a concrete street. We could do a concrete street with an asphalt overlay. And the average thickness on that we've been doing on residential streets, it's about 4 inches of the stone and then 7 inches of concrete. And then we would put about 3 inches of asphalt over top of that. So,
Okay, I was just wondering, it sounds extremely costly to dig up, like,
It's-
repaving versus doing
yeah,
base.
it's definitely a larger cost. Like one street may be like $1 million versus, trying to do multiple
Couple hundred thousand.
streets for at the same price. So.
Um, Just a question. We approved adding those streets on April 1st.
Mhm.
How long does it take to prep for the bids on these approximately?
Well, we send out our surveyor to do some reconnaissance and get some field work for us. We like to get an idea of what type of repairs and how much, what our quantities are going to be for repairs ahead of time. So he was out, he finished all his field work, then, we draw up the plans, we draw up our like existing plan and then we start doing our calculations and engineering on what's going to be done. My goal is to bring it to council at the next meeting on Monday. So I'm working on the estimates, like more detailed estimates right now, so that I can give everybody an idea of where we stand.
And then a follow-up. Because we approved you actually going and doing a physical inventory
Mhm.
and determining what we have to do on those streets, will this shorten the amount of time to prepare the bid package for like next year's streets?
Are you referring to like the evaluation program that's going to
Yeah,
come up?
yes.
No, because we talked about, the street repair program in December? November, December for next year? Or was it not until January?
No, I'm talking about what council approved $50,000 for you to do. That was supposed to take 12 weeks.
Oh,
to do. That's what I'm talking about.
So when is that? So that's the evaluation program.
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So that's in process, I would
It
assume.
is, yes.
And when that is, what I'm trying to get at is, it sounds like because you were working from an old list, we can't look at this and go, okay, we're going out for bid late in the year. Let me start there. Because I know beginning in January, a lot of cities already went out for their street bids and for this year. And I understand why we had a delay. That's Brenda, please don't take what I'm saying wrong.
Mhm.
I understand all of that. I'm just saying now that we're gonna have this more thorough evaluation of the streets, is that going to be able to assist in prioritizing for 2026? And then allowing, based on whatever is budgeted, that time frame to shorten from when you know what streets we can do to when we are actually going out for the bids to actually have somebody bid to do them. That's
Uh,
all.
It could a little bit because we can like plan ahead our lists.
Uh-huh.
And then after the budget's approved and, we go through our,
Yeah, I realize
paperwork-
it's budgetary and we're
So-
bouncing back and forth. I get that too.
I don't usually have the authorization to start this year for next year's program because of engineering costs. It's not like, I used up my engineering costs for this year.
Okay,
So,
that
yeah.
is helpful to know.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's
I
very
was
helpful
trying to
to
say
know.
that and I
No,
was.
that's very helpful to know. Okay,
So.
that's an excellent explanation. If you had the engineering cost to do it, you could.
Yeah,
Based, once that evaluation
Mhm.
is done, you'd have a pretty clear idea of what comes to the top
yes,
and if council were to
Mhm.
authorize the additional, then
we could start sooner.
that's
Yeah.
good to know. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay,
Thank you. I'm
you're
glad I
welcome.
asked the question.
Okay, any other?
Yeah, just one quick,
Mhm.
Ms. Weiser reminded me of something. So hypothetically, let's say the budget's passed in December, January, you get your new authorization for funding. Am I assuming correctly that the earlier you go out for bid, the more competitive and better price it is?
Well, I think contractors are less busy, so they're looking to fill up their schedule for the year. So maybe,
If I might offer on
Yeah,
that,
please.
the prices are more favorable the earlier in the year you bid. However, the size of your program also plays significantly into the pricing you get. So with us being a smaller community, the prices we get will not be the same as a community that does $2 million worth of work per year or something like that. So that will affect the pricing overall, but the earlier we bid, the better off we are. And when you mentioned the base repair, that is something that the areas that fail, if we don't do that base repair, those areas will radiate up through our new surface and you have that street failing much sooner. So that's the reason for the spot base repair that we do.
Ms. Weiser?
Yeah. What we used to do, because we had our street program ready in advance, was piggyback with Shaker because they're much more organized. And that way we got better prices. So yes, Mr. Pennington, you're right. But there are ways that smaller communities can work together, the little dose of regionalization, to actually achieve best prices. So I think what we've done in council is sort of forcing the issue about, let's do a comprehensive study of the streets. We now have the base that potentially we could be ahead of the curve, know what we need to do, and reach out to other communities so that when we go out for bids, we can get the best price. Thank you.
This is wonderful. This is how committees work. We bring some information forward and then we build upon that. This is fantastic. Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
coming tonight and for helping us with 101. Okay. Next, Mr. Pennington. I've asked Mr. Pennington to talk to our committee about a few things. So last year around this time, I asked about potholes, so it's almost like a little annual ask since I was driving and I noticed patches of the cobblestone and so on and so forth. So I'd like to get ahead of that before other people notice and we hear all about it.
Yeah. I've given you each a copy of a sheet that I had here with various street and catch basin repairs. So these are what you see here, mainly our Cleveland Water Department repairs that we need to do where they had breaks over the winter. So in each of these locations, they've dug up the road, left a stone base, and we are in the process of going through, filling those areas, patching them with concrete, and then doing an asphalt cap on those streets. So the ones you see in yellow are the ones that we've completed up through Friday, I believe is the last one that we put some asphalt in, Thursday or Friday. But in any event, those you see in process, we may have concrete in the hole already, waiting to do the asphalt overlay where we get some cold patch in the holes and that sort of thing. The other ones are ones that are still waiting to be dug out by our personnel and then filled with concrete to a couple inches below the surface. And then we proceed to do the asphalt cap on those. So this list here does not get into individual potholes that people may see on various streets. Those we do on a case by case basis when we go out and we may hit a street and we may do pothole patching. That is done when crews are available and we have our machine out where we put cold patch in the spots. Those also, when a resident or someone would contact me in regards to a particular street, we put those, I print out the email or the contact that I have on those, and I give those to that crew so that when they do go out, we try to focus on trying to get those particular areas addressed sooner rather than later. So this list that you see here has a few of the holes that you see adjacent to the street, which are curb drain repairs, Bushnell being one, Dysart being one, Laurelhurst being one. Also has an area where an inlet basin's top has failed. We're going to dig down and rebuild the inlet basin on Milton. And then the rest of these, again, are all Cleveland Water Department street repairs.
I have a couple questions first.
Sure.
First of all, thank you so much for this. Very much appreciate it. I'm interested and curious, and I don't know that you have this prepared right now, obviously, but the few that you cited here that don't have in process or complete, about a half dozen, and a couple look a little more, like the inlet basin rebuild looks a little more serious. I'm curious about the time, the date they were reported or identified to today. You know, how long, and I understand you need crews to do it and manpower and stuff, but I'm still curious about the time that it takes from something to be reported to being worked at.
It really, as you say, is subject to personnel availability for the most part. Some of these, I can't tell you exactly when they were called in, but the curb drain repairs, we went out, we did the cone them, put something over top of the hole, barreled them off to where they are at least protected. So what we do is we go out, we try to protect the locations, and then we try to prioritize them as crews become available to handle areas. For instance, we started this year with completing the Warrensville Center areas there, as well as the one in Claver where we had the mobile breaks over in that area.
Yeah.
So when we do start going to the repairs, we try to focus sometimes on a particular neighborhood or particular area where I can get some close together, where we can dig those, do the concrete pours, and then when we come back in, then do the asphalt all at one time.
The inlet basin rebuild, do we do that or do we contract that out?
We do that in-house with our personnel. I've got a couple of guys that are able to do so.
And is that more serious? I don't know enough about it.
It takes time, but it's no more serious than any of the others. It does take a bit to re-brick an inlet basin and then reset a new casting on it or reset the existing casting on it to be able to then fill the hole and patch
So
around.
I would be interested after the meeting to know the time when these were identified and just for my
Yeah.
own edification.
I don't know if I have all those dates. A lot of times I've written down the addresses and may not have written down the actual date that the call came
Mhm.
in. So I don't know that I can give you each of those on a individual basis.
Weeks, months.
It's, right now, it's getting to be months on some of it. It just,
Mhm.
between doing the spring cleanup, being down 2 full-time personnel, and then trying to focus on doing the day-to-day tasks we have to do, our brush pickup, our specials collections, which gets quite heavy with the springtime. I try to break one crew free when I can, and during the month of April, we had no one able to do these due to the fact we did have that crew on leaf pickup. So we try to prioritize and do these as quickly as we can.
I think Ms. Weiser had questions.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm interested in the number of potholes. Did we have more this year or less?
With the freeze thaw this year, there are many, many more potholes this year than we've dealt with in the past.
Have you been able to get to all of them?
No, we are getting through what we can as quickly as we can. But they, as we went through the winter, where I had a guy out constantly filling potholes. Every freeze thaw we had, did reopen.
Years ago, we got rid of moral claims. We used to do $300 in moral claims for damage caused by potholes. Are we doing anything when residents submit, complain? Or are
I
we
can answer
referring them
that.
to small claims court?
Yeah, when we get a claim, we turn it over to the insurance company and the insurance agent handles it. And usually the rule is if we had noticed that particular pothole, didn't fix it within a reasonable period of time, would honor the claim in most cases. Everything else seems to be correct. If not, then we're not responsible. It's the motorist. So I know I've been involved in 3 of them. I think over this winter, and people had replaced tires, but we didn't have notice of any of them. I mean, and reasonable means, if we get a report on Friday afternoon, we're not expected to come over, on the weekend to fix it. Like Mr. Pennington said, if it's something serious where it's, a threat to somebody's safety, they may put a plate over it or do something temporary before they can get to it. But, to me, a reasonable amount of time is, within a few days to be able to assess it, schedule a crew and get it done.
Okay. I've noticed on a few where we filled them, they're starting to sink.
With cold patch and rain and everything else, that cold patch
Yeah,
stuff.
that's the problem in the winter. They don't last. Hot patch.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
So I have no idea what the answer to this question is. Is there a certain way that you're supposed to fill a pothole? Because I've observed some on different streets, some, service department personnel, and if you could explain to me how it should be filled.
Okay, well, it depends on what type of material you're using. If you're using cold patch is basically a flowable material. It's self-leveling. So you throw it in the hole, it levels itself out, a little bit of tire traffic, and it's packed in there. Hot mix is a different story. Hot mix, when we put hot mix in a hole, that we try to clean out the hole the best we can. We place a hot mix in there. We typically tamper roll it to get it to secure it to the adjacent pavement around it. And that is a more permanent repair. And those, we can only do a limited number of those with the equipment we have. We actually have to go to the asphalt plant, get some material. That material cools in a quick amount of time, so we can only do limited amount of areas, and we have to have those areas prepped and ready to go when we do those.
Okay, so I assume it's probably the cold.
Most of the time you see the cold mix, the
The
cold
cold
patch.
mix that's getting done. It just, as Ms. Weiser just said, I've noticed like a bunch that were just filled. There's rocks everywhere and they're already like, I just don't know how. I don't know if there's a better system to do it, that's all.
Cold mix is really the most efficient way to handle the potholes. If a hole starts redeveloping, put more cold mix on it to try to secure the hole. Unfortunately, that's without absent having a very robust resurfacing program where you do a large number of streets in a community. That is the #1 method for doing repairs. Absent doing partial resurfacings of streets or things like that, you're usually using cold patch to handle the day-to-day potholes that develop.
topic. Recycling review. So this has been very, very exciting. The recycling reports seem to be positive and build upon each other. I had the wonderful opportunity to go to the waste management facility in Oakwood the day after Earth Day, I believe, April 23rd, for a complete tour. I think we were all invited and I went, and it is fascinating. It is just fascinating. So very encouraging. It made me think a little more about recycling and how to build upon our success. Any new program, the last step is to reevaluate and to make improvements, if possible. And so in thinking about that, reducing the barriers to recycling, that's something I have said before. So one of the things I noticed, which is good and bad, is so many of the recycling carts are overflowing. The tops are propped up. And so I'd like this committee to talk about, and Mr. Pennington to weigh in, what are some thoughts about the next step? Are we talking about giving residents the opportunity for additional carts? Are we talking about maybe more frequent collection? There could be a variety of things to do to keep the tops level, full, and opportunity for more recycling. Any thoughts?
Well, if I may, I'll give you some statistics here and then I'll get into that a little bit. But for the recycling review, currently right now, 2,612 approximately households have received recycling cards, which is approximately 61% of the eligible households. Of those, 489 or 18.7% have the 45 gallon containers, and 2,123 have the large 95 gallon containers, 81.3%. Just looking at recycling numbers, just for everyone's knowledge, December, we had 34.56 tons of recycling. January, 38.14 tons of recycling. February was a down month. We only had 29.32 tons. Yeah. March, we went up to 40.88 tons of recycling. And then April, we hit 43.07 tons of recycling. During the late February, beginning of March, we distributed more of the second round of carts, get more carts into people's homes. So you are seeing those numbers start to increase. And I currently have about 45 to 50 more carts that I need to distribute to those that have asked for their first cart. We have looking towards the future, that once we do get the residents that need and want carts serviced, looking then at the option of having a potential second cart for residents, something where they could purchase a cart at cost, where they would do something like that. But that again would be something that we would want to serve the residents that have not been serviced yet first before we do that. As far as you mentioned the increasing the frequency of recycling, with the personnel and equipment I currently have, that is not feasible. We have the crew out 4 days a week, doing either the A route or the B route. With that, that's 2 gentlemen tied up daily on that. We have to run the truck that we have to the recycling facility once a day. And right now, there's just not a feasible method to do that without adding additional personnel as well as an additional truck for us to look at increasing the frequency. So overall, while that may be something, that we look at towards the future, and automating has been a good method for us to get the trucks filled and get the items to the facility. We do, though, need the equipment and the personnel to be able to increase that service.
That's what I thought. I thought I'd ask the question. When will we know, how often do we know what our rebate is? it sounded like we went from paying $105 per ton to just under $20 rebate. How will we know if it increases over time?
Well, what they do is they do a analysis with an audit of our materials once a year, typically
once a year.
sometime between October and December. With that, then they look at the composition of our recycling, and they make a determination based upon the market value, the amount of contaminants, et cetera, as to what they feel they need from our community for recycling. We went from initially with the contract that we entered into beginning of October, paying $29 a ton for the recycling, to now getting a rebate of approximately $16.50. So that rate fluctuates based upon the market value of the particular materials that we have. So that can shift a little bit, but it's right around that $16.50 per month or per ton that we're getting back currently.
So what I worry about is if we offer carts, like what you think, at a cost, people might just say, nah, I'll overfill it. You know, so I'm not sure, that might be a solution, but it might not. And there might not be room for people to have more carts. They're big.
The carts are big. The other
Big.
thing, I'm sorry.
We're good.
The other thing that I would recommend, mention with that is the more carts people have, the more likely they are to place contaminants
Yeah.
in the carts. So, that tends to be a concern when we're looking at things. Cardboard boxes, I know, take up a lot of space. And one of the complaints we get from people is, hey, you didn't fully empty my cart. That's because the carts, they stuff the cardboard in so tight that when the
True.
arm grabs it, it doesn't empty out the cart. So we do run into that on occasion. And unfortunately, there's not much we can do other than educate the resident. Don't pack the cardboard as tight or cut it into smaller pieces, that sort of thing. So we do, I do try to educate residents in regards to that. Or why didn't my cart get taken? I said, well, did you have plastic bags in there? Yeah, well, that's considered a contaminant and your cart was rejected. So we try to educate the residents as they call in with things like that and try to make the program as efficient as possible while also reducing the amount of contamination in the system.
Ms. Weiser.
You know, you threw out some numbers, which I think are wonderful. Is it possible to give us quarterly reports on this in writing? So we can actually see the numbers rather than try to scribble them while you just chatter them off?
Okay, on the
Yeah, that would be
The,
nice. That way we
quantities,
have-
okay.
That way we have a sense. I have gotten some complaints about sign up where I guess there were two people that were in their 80s and ended up with carts and were dragging it and are able to walk a bit and were dragging them to the curb where they were totally unaware that we have an age that we have. Well, I don't know why we decided on 75. I guess, I don't know if that's a magic number or not. I mean, people retire out at 67. Some of us are active and able to do. I would hope we'd be willing to take that 75 down to at least 70 and be a little bit more appropriate. I'm glad that we got a printout finally. I've had not seen this on the application for special assistance. I'm curious as to why we would have something that says, I do not have another household member, relative, friend, or neighbor that can assist me with moving the cart to the curb. Why are we asking a resident who pays taxes, one way or another, invest in the city, have to call someone to then come over and move their cart for them? I had a woman a couple doors up from me who called me and said, oh, so-and-so finally came over to move my cart. And I'm like, she's in her 80s. I said, why? And she said, well, it's the only way the cart can get there. So she doesn't have a relative that is close that can come running over on the day to move those carts, and I think that's offensive. I really think it's offensive. That's, you know, you're gonna ask me to move my garbage too? So I would hope we might consider lowering that age down to at least 70 and deleting the relative friend or neighbor. I mean, if there is a healthy person in the household, that makes sense, but having somebody actually have to call somebody to make arrangements to move a recycling cart, we're in essence asking them to go far above and beyond. And I think it's inappropriate. and It's an insult to the residents.
Mayor?
Yeah, I thought, I might be wrong, when we originally did this, that we were taking away the medical documentation because of privacy concerns.
That does not get shared with anybody other than me, and all I need from those residents is that they have a particular condition. It doesn't get shared beyond that. I don't keep any record of that. All I do is then make note that they did have a medical condition. And I actually, I don't even make note that they have a medical condition. At that point, I just approve the special assistance, and they're on the list for special assistance.
I just remember having a pretty long discussion about that, and I also don't remember that there was a specific age. I don't know, Ms. Sacks, do you
This-
remember?
But this is this through Citizen Serve?
I'm
I don't think
not
so.
sure.
I think it's just on the
Yep,
website.
it's through,
Well, no, there's a form that a way on the website they can submit.
Mhm.
Well, so there is a document that comes into the city and exists somewhere in our records electronically.
I have,
So I understand what you're saying, Mr. Pennington. But anything that we submit electronically, there's a history and a record, and I don't think we're allowed to just delete in terms of public records, because it does become, although it's shielded, I would think
Yeah,
under
it's
HIPAA,
not a, right, it's not a public record.
it's not a public record. Good, but do we have some verification that it is actually deleted out of the files?
I've had no one ever ask, I've never supplied medical documentation as far as that. They may say that they have a condition, and that's.
Mr.
the-
Pennington, with all due respect, I know somebody that did physically send it in, scanned it and submitted it.
You did?
And I can show you the copy of it.
Okay. If you just let me know the address, I can look into the system to see if I had anything on that, but I don't recall ever seeing.
Oh, yeah,
Something like
it
that.
went in, trust me.
Okay.
And I can prove it.
Okay.
So I think this falls, this whole piece about accommodation, application for special assistance, in my mind falls under the topic that I brought up about reducing or eliminating barriers to garbage collection, to recycling specifically. And I think for the most part, people are comfortable with their recycling carts every other week, once a week. We still have to work on them bringing it back in on time and not overstuffing it. And we really need more education. I think we're really lacking. And just because they call in and you give them a little education, I think we could use our public documents, whether it's Mosaic or the Friday wrap up or whatever. Maybe you could have a contaminant spotlight of the week, no, whatever, eggshell, clamshell, styrofoam, whatever. It can be positive what to put in and negative what to not put in, and just constantly reinforce. I think over time, people
Bless you.
will do a better job. It's not just there, but it's also the recycling, the cardboard bin, which you just peek in there and see all kinds of styrofoam and plastic. So education can never be enough. It really can't. And so I encourage administration to take advantage of those tools and move forward with our sustainability efforts in this regard. But as far as the age, the medical, the having someone else, it might not even be, it might be behavioral or something you can see or can't see. It could be people are perfectly healthy and not of that age, but they have a very steep incline of a driveway, long driveway, which could be treacherous and cause other problems. And they might choose not to recycle, at least for, an inclement weather, which could be over time, and just put their stuff in their garbage, their recycling. So again, I know I've said this before and I still believe it. I would just like to see if people need special assistance to ask for it. And then you can talk to them about it perhaps, and just leave it open-ended and see what comes in. I think you'll be surprised that you're not going to get a lot of calls, but you will get calls from people who, or email or whatever, some communication that just says, you know what, I need a little more help. I just need a little more help to do it right, to contribute my contribution to sustainability in our city and our society. So I would encourage administration to consider pretty much eliminating a lot of these requirements. I want to say one more thing, and that's in the general application. I think where the agreement, am I seeing this right? Yeah. No, I don't have it. Let me see. The general application, there's something about the rules, okay? And I don't have it in front of me. I took two of the special. I'd like to see if you would consider what the consequence is, to, yes, it's my responsibility to place recyclables from the list of acceptable items, move it to the curb before 7, and have it in my yard by the next day. I'd like to see one more piece in there so people understand what can happen, or they will be fined, or they, according to this ordinance, or they could look it up themselves, or some type of reference to what the consequence is, so that people are fully informed. It's not just, oh, very nice, well, I'll just leave it out a little long, it doesn't matter. And they forget that they ever did this. It might make more of an impression to have just a little more information. Ms. Weiser.
Okay, in regards to that, I know that housing has started tagging garbage cans that are being left, garbage cans too. They get moved towards the curb and get left out. We compromised because of the houses on the eastern end and requested that they be kept behind the front property or the front line of the house. And there are some streets you can go up and down and there's garbage cans in front of the houses constantly 24/7. So that I think housing's taken care of. The second thing is, yes, it has become intriguing because I know I live in and it just utterly amazes me. I'll go up the street and on the off week and there's recycling carts out. And it's like, apparently we haven't figured it out. And it would be nice if the city would add that to maybe the Friday newsletter. Hey, remember you're on a 2-week, because obviously people need a refresher on that. And if it takes a motion, I'd be happy to make a motion to, at minimum, reduce that age to 70 years of age, and also to remove relative, friend, or neighbor out of that last item on the application for special assistance.
Can I ask something about the motion? Sure. Would you consider amending it to eliminate the request for medical information? Just asking.
Well, I would ask Mr. Pennington what his feeling is on that.
Okay.
My biggest concern with eliminating the medical documentation for those younger than 75 is the fact we had people that, well, I run a daycare and I don't have time to bring my can out to the street. That then becomes a matter of people wanting it done out of convenience. And there's a difference between need and convenience when it comes to that. When I have 2 workers dedicated to the recycling route, we want to get that route done in a day. In order to do so, we need to service those with the special needs that truly have special needs, as opposed to just anyone that feels it may be convenient to leave their cart out back and have us roll it to the street and back. So I would be concerned with removing the medical necessity from the form.
Okay,
I think going to 70 is logical. I don't think that's inappropriate at all. I think we need to advertise that a bit more. Because again, people call me and it's like, my neighbor who's 82 years old was fighting to get his cart down to the end of the drive. And that particular, I'd been to that house. And that's a heck of a steep drive that that woman has. And God love her, that she wanted to recycle bad enough that she was dragging this stupid cart up. And here's the problem. If the person falls and you are of that age, you really are putting them at risk. So we need to make these things clearer to people. I think I think that going to 70 is not a problem. But again, getting rid of that relative, friend or neighbor, I don't think anybody should have to ask anybody outside of their household to do their trash. Or recycling. I'm sorry, I just think that's an affront to the person that lives in that house.
so I'm going to ask one more question on a different track. We recently passed an ordinance for special bulk collection and recognized senior citizens at 65 years old who may be on.
Are you talking to?
Sure. We recently passed an ordinance for special bulk collection. We increased the general cost, but kept it at the reduced subsidized rate. I think it was $10 for people who are 65. Perhaps Mr. King suggested that, which was very helpful. Do we want to mimic that? Do we want to make 65? That's, kind of consistent with what we recognize in the city.
The permits, I haven't seen, because we get copies of the permits. I mean, we're a little behind on them. I haven't seen $20 permits show up yet, so.
That's a
we may
different
have to-
issue.
No, I don't think it's because of age. I think it is just, we're getting the listing of the permits. I think the last one was from April.
My focus was
So-
about the age.
Yeah, I
That's
realize.
to be
Do
consistent.
you know how many people get assistance?
We're somewhere around 60, I think.
Okay, so then the question is, right, how many
Mhm.
more is that can add in?
Mhm.
Pool?
Okay.
How much time is that gonna take?
So maybe going to 70.
Actually,
Okay,
it's
start that.
It's only a 5-year difference. It's not gonna
Just-
boost it up. We're not gonna end up with 60 more.
It's actually
people.
probably closer to 80. Right now, I'm just thinking,
Okay.
on average, 10
That's,
per day.
that's great. Okay, kudos to the staff.
So changing it to 70 is not gonna add that anymore. But I do think that, I'm sorry, I have an issue with telling people that.
Is there a second to the motion? I'll second the motion. Any
All
more
right, and just to
discussion?
clarify, this would be a recommendation.
Recommendation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Recommendation.
vote,
Got it
or-
from the,
Okay, all those in favor?
aye.
Is it? Any opposed? No, this is the committee. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Pennington. We have one more topic. Trash storage facility, Cedar and Kerwin. So, Mr. Pennington, we've had discussions and, I appreciate that, people on the committee wanted to have a little more, they had more questions. So if you could just explain the history of that site. Kind of because empty property, if it were owned, it's owned by the city. If it were, is it like a transfer area? if it were owned by residential, it would be, cited, I just, a little history about it and what your intention is and our city's intention to use it.
That facility, which we call Kerwin Yard, is a materials storage facility for spoils from road excavations. We store our scrap metal up there that we have hauled out by a particular company that pays us for scrap when we place the materials in there. We do store our residential tires that get dropped off, get stored back there as until they are picked up once a year by the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District.
Oh, one.
So, so we do store a number of materials back there. We do have the large pile of mixed debris back there right now. The entire site is bordered by a fence, which the issues that came up more recently were due to some sections of fence that had fallen due to a tree from the adjacent property falling on the fence. And then we did take care of that. We secured another section of fence that had been loose as well. So the property is secured. Everything is, as far as the exteriors, everything is secured within that fencing. Now the pile that we have there is going to take some doing to get out of there. Currently, we have to be very careful on how we haul that out of there with our equipment that we have without destroying our equipment. The union is currently opposed to us hiring an outside company to come in and remove the pile. So the last time that my predecessor had the pile removed, there was a grievance that was filed that we ultimately lost, and we ended up paying the equivalent cost of what we hauled the stuff out to the workers in compensation for overtime that they did not get. So we are in the process. We're going to have to sort the materials by type, and then we're going to have to carefully remove it without destroying one of our plow trucks. So we are in the process of making those arrangements after discussions with the union.
Thank you very much for explaining that. Councilwoman Weiser.
Okay, I missed it. Is the fence repaired?
Yes,
So it's now totally fenced?
yes, it is.
Number two, what are you doing now with material that's coming in? Are you having them sorted when it comes in so we don't end up with the pile that apparently got grown from the previous service director?
That pile has grown over probably 10 years. So it's one of those things where we are bringing, when we do our street repairs right now, we are currently bringing more material in there where we've excavated out before we do the area. When we haul this out, it is my intent to separate dirt from stone and then reutilize that stone in some of our excavations throughout the city to save the city money on how we do things, which will reduce the amount that we have to haul out as well.
All I have to say is this, looking at the pictures, I am amazed that the city of University Heights would allow something like that to exist next to a residential area. I understand what you said. It never should have gotten to this point. You're relatively new on the job, so I'm not speaking to you. If it's been there for 10 years, that covers 8 years that it might have been addressed earlier. And the first go round were refrigerators that still had doors on them that could be opened, and the site was unsecured, which is a danger to kids. And kids are kids. They look at stuff and it's like, oh, what's that? And you put a pile of bricks and dirt, and it's like putting a big sign, play here, because it's fun. And we are really fortunate that no child was hurt in there.
those refrigerators should never have been left there in that condition. I've made that correction with my workers and that is not occurring anymore. So
which I greatly appreciate.
Vice Mayor?
I think, so what's the timeline to get that hauled away?
it's going to be subject to personnel availability right now. I can either have them fix streets or haul dirt. It's a matter of trying to prioritize and getting that out of there. It's going to be a process. And
Rough timeline. 6 months?
it's going to be at least the end of the year before we get everything out of there, I would assume. Just due to the pure volume we have there, as well as the other things we need to get caught up on. Right now, currently my workers are working overtime to get the pool ready. So we have it open, ready for opening weekend. There will be other issues that we have to address. More, of course, the street repair list is one of those. And some of the equipment we use for this, it's the same piece of equipment that we would use for doing that. So we will prioritize that and get it out of there. It is a priority of mine to get that removed. But at the same time, I need to have the equipment and the personnel available. And there is going to be some definite overtime hours in relation to this.
Okay, and do we have any other sites that we store things in?
No, right now, everything is either on the main campus, behind Yabi where we store the recycling carts, or there at Kerwin Yard.
I think that's it. Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Okay, thank you all for coming. It's now 7:35.
I am.
I know you're right.
We did a wonderful. When it's called PWA, so I looked at it. They did a board meeting presentation.
Okay.
Just speaking of machine learning soul. And it was. And I still have the materials. But what Julie's been, what Julie did, it was a new company.
Yeah, that was better.
Yeah, that's not slow, right?
It's improved tremendously.
Oh, yeah.
Never. Although. There's trends. Never got her again.
Yes, dear. I mean, so was they say there's something in?
No, I don't recall. That's the thing. I don't, because with me, as soon as I was meant to